Hi students, welcome to HSC Chemistry and the Industrial Chemistry option. This is video number 23 and we're going to just look at the different types of detergents in a little bit more detail. I guess before we get too much into this, it's probably useful for you to start to get a comparison table going. And we'll do this in class, but it's probably also a good way to put all of this information together, particularly as you're studying now, as trials are getting closer, to give yourself a nice little summarized, simple thing to remember about each of these different types of detergents, ways of being able to compare them, and also to identify the key features of them. And tables are a really good way, comparison tables are a really good way of doing that. We'll do that in class, but you can even do that as we go along. So remember, there's three different types of detergents that we have to look at. Detergents are synthetics, I guess parallels for soaps. They do the same sort of thing. They act as surfactants. And this first group, the anionic detergents, were the original and also the most widely used group, I guess primarily because they are so similar in structure to soaps. We know that soaps have an anionic head, and so do these particular types of detergents, and they also have the long hydrophilic tails. So their structure is most similar to natural soaps. The head, however, is usually, if you consider a long chain of carbons attached to an oxygen and a sulfur. I'm going to leave it like this for the moment. There are actually double bonds that sort of may be present, but to explain those is actually beyond the scope of this particular course, so I don't want to sort of get too much into that at this point in time. But effectively, what we have is an anionic region. This can often occur like this, so that it effectively looks very similar to a when we were drawing our electron diagrams before and identifying that there can be an overall charge associated with these particular types of ions. So this is kind of the derivative. It's a little more complex than this, but the important thing is that you can distinguish between the three different types of detergents. So anything that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of something like this is kind of probably close enough at this stage. The anionic detergents tend to be a little bit more effective as cleaners than the natural soaps, and good examples of these are your common laundry detergents and dishwashing liquids. If you get one of those out, go home, or if you're home already, go and have a look. And you can actually see some of the names of each of these different types of substances written on the side of those different components. Now, there's obviously a range of different types of detergents, but you're looking for something that's a derivative of one of these alkanonic acid molecules. One thing with these types of detergents is they produce a lot of foam. They're very foamy, and so one of the problems associated with these detergents is when we wash them into our waterways, they can actually create a lot of foam in the waterways, and that's obviously not ideal. There are different kinds of environmental issues associated with different types of detergents, but the foamy nature of anionic detergents is one thing that is kind of not particularly in their favor. And if you might remember from the previous video, the other problem with these ones, of course, is because they're similar in structure to soaps, they also behave similarly to soaps in hard water, and that is their effectiveness it slightly drops. The cationic detergents are ones that have derivatives of ammonia, so the carbon is attached to a nitrogen and some hydrogens. And as a consequence of that, it has an overall positive charge, and that's the positive head, or the cationic head, that is going to attract the water molecules. The cationic detergents are the preferred cleaner for different types of plastics. They're the key component in hair conditioners and fabric softeners. And if you think about those two products, what they're really designed to do is to reduce the friction and the static in fibers. And that includes hair, not that there's too much in mind, but also clothing. That really tries and reduces that friction, makes them feel nice and smooth. And that's the key to these particular types of detergents. One important problem with these detergents is that they often have disinfectants or antiseptics associated with them. So they can have like a bactericide kind of a function. That's not so good again when we put them down the sink, because when they get into waterways, they can actually kill off the microorganisms that are present naturally in those waterways. Also, they can be a big problem in sewage treatment, because of course bacteria are a key for breaking down the types of material that you're going to find in the sewage. And again, with a lot of these poured down the sinks, poured into our piping, you can actually get them ending up in the sewage treatment areas, again having a disinfectant, antiseptic kind of effect on the microbes that are there for their decomposing power, and therefore reduce their effectiveness. The final one, just to have a quick look at, are the non-ionic detergents. Now, of course, we've said that the tails always are similar, but the head this time is an oxy group, and so a terminal alcohol, so an OH off the end. And of course, this is polar, this bond, and the fact that it's non-ionic is okay as long as we have some polarity that's going to interact with our polar water molecule. So this is obviously how we get it. Because they're not ionic, they do produce less foam, and these ones are more common in things like cosmetics, paints, adhesives, and pesticides. So you can see that there's a reasonable range of different types of detergents around. We sort of use detergents as a very big group, but if we start to break these down into the 3 different types, look at the specific differences in their chemical composition, and then also in their specific uses and their consequences in the environment, then that gives us a little bit of a clearer idea on the differences between all these different types of detergents. We will continue to have a little bit more of a look at detergents before we leave this topic, but we'll also investigate them a little bit more in class, and I'm sure you do some more questions as well. Thanks for watching.